Let's bring our January 11th Board of Trustees meeting to order and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. And let's get that going. I'll start it off. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, with justice for all. Thank you, folks. All right, roll call, please.
Trustee Gator.
Here.
Trustee Jerome. Trustee Kinney. Trustee Kinney's here.
Present.
Trustee McDonald.
Here.
Trustee Whitehouse. Mayor Pro Tem Knutson.
Here.
Mayor Hammond.
Here. Any amendments to the agenda tonight that we need to be aware of? Okay. Conflicts of interest that we need to bring up? Good. Okay. Real quick before we move on. We decided kind of collectively to do this meeting via Zoom tonight. Couple of reasons. One is some of us trustees and mayors, we're just now coming off of COVID. I'm one of them. And it was a different experience for sure. But we also had some staff members that are coming off of it. And we didn't feel that at this time it was worth the risk to get us all together. Our operators and our staff are very important. We can't really afford to lose anybody right now. And so we thought that maybe given the rise over the holidays of these infections, this meeting might be well positioned to have a Zoom. It's my intention to resume in-person meetings as soon as possible right after this one, maybe even the next work session. So this is just this one time, and I think we can be effective. We got a long agenda tonight. Let's hit it hard and see if we can't get through it. All right, our first item tonight is a public comment. Any individuals wishing to speak on items that are non-action items this evening on the agenda will need to raise their hand in through the Zoom. And once called upon, state your name for the record, and individuals will be limited to 3 minutes during the public comment. So Crystal, please lead us on this.
We have 4525 Ingalls Drive.
Sir, can you hear us or ma'am?
Apologies, I didn't have my hand raised. This is Sherelle Teets. I'm just sitting listening in.
Okay.
Next
Anyone
we have
else?
next we have Christine Gator.
Okay. Miss Gator.
Christine Gator, downtown neighborhood. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention some mismanagement of taxpayer money. I did a Cora request, an open records request to get the P cards for fourth quarter. And there is where I found that the town spent $1,800 on the Joseph in Nashville. The Joseph is a luxury hotel. I looked on their website and their rooms are going for $369 a night. Whereas the Marriott in Westminster that the trustees went to for the CML conference, that's going for $99 a night.
Yep.
So some staff went to the Joseph, a luxury hotel, for $1,800 total, roughly. And in their budgeted line item for travel and training, their line item is $4,500. So at that rate, they can go to a luxury hotel twice in 1 year and have money left over for eating. So I think, one, we got a little bit too much money in travel and training. And so I looked at all the different funds. There's a total of $116,322 budgeted for 2022 this year in all the different funds under travel and training. And if I just did a proposed, if we just spend $500 per staff in each fund, we can get rid of $84,000 of that. We can reduce it. And the bulk water station, that's 85,000. So that's just an idea. I know you can't transfer the money and all that to different funds, but just the idea that we got way too much money budgeted in travel and training, and it's being used for luxury items, which is a bit too frivolous for spending on taxpayers with taxpayer money. I just have 3 requests. One, that we don't let this happen again, and whatever you guys need to do to make sure that doesn't happen again. 2, I would like to request that P cards be more public, either in the packet, like with the checklist, or online. And number 3, reducing the budget in all areas for travel and training. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Janice Burns.
Okay, Janice.
Hi, I don't have a lot to say, just that as residents, we cannot afford another rate increase. I mean, to have our water bill doubled or more last year, it's already the highest in the state, and now you're talking about the sewer rates, and we can't afford that. So I love Christine's go-getter attitude, digging in and finding where can we cut things, but you got to find another way, because residents cannot afford. You have to be more creative than just raise fees. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for that, Janice.
We have no other hands raised at this time.
Okay,
Oh, hold on.
appreciate those comments. What's that?
Sorry, Mayor. We had one last minute. 4525 Ingalls Drive.
Yes, that is me, Sherelle Teets, 4525 Ingalls Drive. I would like to suggest the Board of Trustees look at a board made of citizens, experienced financial people that can actually be a board of accountability, where they, like Christine had said, there's P cards that need to be reviewed, statements, receipts, where you have a board of people, citizens from the community, sit and review these things once a month to report back. So we're not catching these on the tail end of an entire year of spending. If you had that board assembled, you possibly would be able to catch these shortcomings or over expenditures a lot quicker. I think that it would benefit the residents as well as the trustees having a board of accountability towards how things are being handled in the town. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherelle, very much.
Next, we have Jesse.
Okay, Jesse.
Hey there, this is Jessie Andreen from the Harvest Village neighborhood, and I just wanted to chime in as well. I know that I've been really uptight about this situation, and I know that it's not any of your guys' fault individually, but I guess I have concerns with just town spending as well. Around our town, that people are just confused why we're spending, $1 million on a new town building, but we don't have money for water. And just the fact that that falls on residents seems kind of crazy. So I know that this water situation is rough all the way around, and that we've just had I guess just as far as this goes, but I agree with Janice. Like, I was just talking to a family member that lives in Grand Junction, and their typical water bill is $30, and I think that that's and we have a couple $100 bills. I know this is what we're all complaining about constantly, but I just ask that our town would spend responsibly, and that we would come up with a solution as residents and town staff and representatives to deal with this situation, because You know, I would agree with people when they say that it's not right for us to spend as much as we are on frivolous things when we have really serious issues that we are dealing with. So guys, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jesse.
We have no other hands raised at this time.
Okay, I appreciate those comments. I wrote them down. And we will be going through all that too with our staff and get to the bottom of some of that as we go forward. Try to get some answers back out to you. We'll close the public comment at this point on non-agenda items and move on with our agenda tonight as it is. The next item up is a proclamation for a school choice week proclamation. And I'll go ahead and move this on. This is a proclamation, school choice week, January 23 through 29, 2022. This is always a favorite one of mine because I think our schools in Wellington are the best that we can have, other than, I'm not talking politically, I'm talking with the education of the teachers and the students, okay? So tonight, whereas the children of Wellington should have access to the highest quality education possible, and Wellington recognizes the important role that an effective education plays in preparing all students to be successful adults, and whereas quality education is critically important to the economic vitality of the Wellington, and whereas educational variety not only helps the diversity of our economy, but also enhances the vibrancy of our community. And whereas our area has many high qualified teaching professionals who are committed to educating our children, and whereas School Choice Week is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, and organizations to raise awareness of the need for effective educational options. Now, therefore, I, Troy Hammond, Mayor of the Town of Wellington, Colorado, do hereby proclaim January 23 through 29, 2022 as School Choice Week. And I call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens, and dated this day, 11th, January 2022. Thank you for that. That's an important proclamation, one of my favorites. Okay. Next item, we have a presentation. Now, I've been looking forward to seeing this, okay? This is the Sewer Roundtable presentation. This is where we had community engagement dive into this area. And I think Anita's got something for us tonight. So Anita, would you share with us what you guys came up with? Now turn your mic on. There you go.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. So give me just a moment here. Okay. Yes, I am Anita Hardy, and I am going to present for you tonight from the Resident Roundtable. And the Resident Roundtable is was a group of citizens that was brought together to work on our sewer and wastewater fund, and to bring back to you some recommendations. So before I really dig into that, I just want to share with everybody, with the trustees and with the town, on behalf of all of the participants in the roundtable, we want to express our appreciation to be included in this first roundtable for the town of Wellington. This was a first, and boy, was it a lot of fun and successful and really educational. We all believed by the time we were finished with our participation here that this opportunity to learn and to provide this feedback was amazing, and it really showed the town's willingness to hear from its residents. The participants included individuals that represented advisory boards and commissions, including the CAC, Parks Advisory Board, the Board of Adjustments, Planning Commissions, Chamber of Commerce, Main Streets Program, along with individuals selected by each board member or trustee. And just so anybody else listening this evening and and seeing this slideshow, please know that our trustees only received this information late last week. So it is still relatively new to them as well. So They were not participants in the roundtable. The trustees and mayor were not participants. This was residents and town staff. So just kind of wanted to put that out there for everybody. This roundtable met over the course of 2 months for 4 separate meetings, 2 to 3 hours each. Plus we had the opportunity to tour the wastewater treatment plant. In between each meeting, we all had homework to complete, as did the town employees. And believe me, they did their homework. Oh my gosh, we would send the town staff back with a list of questions for them to review and get back to us. And they really poured their hearts and souls into this. So we all want to send a shout out and a thank you before I get started here to the Public Works Department, Bob Gowing, Dave Myer, Megan Smith. We learned so much. Cannot even express how much knowledge that they shared with us. And we also want to recognize Patty Garcia, Kelly Holderling, and Mihaela Henschel for their hours and hours of research into the questions and never-ending support of all of us during this time on the roundtable. We really appreciate everyone's willingness to sit with us after hours, sometimes late in the evening, and answer endless number of emails, put together coordinated and organized documents as well for all of us to share and read and learn from, and then also contribute. We really, truly hope that the trustees and the town utilize this format in the future for other opportunities, other decisions, other processes that we go through. So while we were the guinea pigs per se for a resident roundtable, we really encourage the continued use of roundtables. All right, now I'm going to dig into this. Oh my gosh. This, the recommendations that we are bringing to you tonight were a culmination of so many different perspectives and beliefs, and finally our group coming together, understanding of how things work. When we first started this roundtable, a lot of us believed that our task was to truly help you and the town staff figure out how not to have an increase in our sewer rates. And it became very quickly that there was more involved in identifying a rate structure for recommendation than we were able to produce in our short time frame. So we started by identifying 5 values that we recommend are measurements in decisions moving forward. And these involved community, being a good steward, having fiscal responsibility, being transparent. Please share and educate with us. The education was phenomenal during these last couple of months. Planning, we know as trustees you do a lot of planning, continue to do so. And equity, how the community is impacted fairly. But even with the recommendations we have, we all came together to believe that these 4 items here should be attended to regardless. The first thing I want to touch on is maximize the dedicated revenues from your general fund back to the sewer fund. As I mentioned, part of this process, all of our parties completed lots of research. And during this time frame, it was discovered that some portion of our general funds could be granted back to the sewer fund. Thus, we recommend as the resident roundtable that the town take advantage of this to help offset some of the sewer costs. We also recognize there's a very specific regulatory formula, but if we can capitalize on as much of that we can grant back to the sewer fund, every little bit helps. The second component is to assist our residents. Let's help our residents by providing them some financial resource recommendations and help them with applications for applying for assistance as needed. We also recommend looking at the HUG funding that was developed in 2020 as to assist with during the time period of COVID's initial impact. If there's a way we can increase that funding to help some more of our residents, that would be fantastic. One of the biggest things that resonated with all of us from day one all the way through the last several months was educate, educate, educate. When we got through to the very last meeting that we had, as we were putting all of this finally together, it was so clear to all of us that the education we received really helped us understand how these rates, how these funds, how the budgeting process actually works. So if there's a way that we can continue that education for the rest of our residents to really show them how the financing works, what those legal requirements are that the town must meet, I think it's going to go a long ways into helping everybody understand the way our town works. And finally, we're aware that a water conservation plan was adopted a few years back, and we encourage the town to continue and further the implementation of those conservation goals to assist with water usage, reducing that water usage, and ultimately then the costs of the water and sewer to our residents. On top of that, we encourage you as part of your long-term solution planning to research additional funding opportunities that might be helpful to the community at large and our potential future growth, including look at some of those mill levy increases, public-private partnerships, grant funds, and legislative opportunities that might come our way. Through our workshops, though, we, as you can see from some of my pictures here, boy, we brainstormed a lot. And at the end of it, we came up with 3 distinct areas of focus for 2022 that we are asking everyone to look through. Those include our debt structure, our fees and rates, and our budget efficiencies. Okay, with our debt structure, we're asking to look at how is there a way to reduce our loan amount and increase our loan term. So we encourage that and recommend that we look at that loan term and interest rate, and that they're evaluated very strongly. If a 30-year loan interest rate is only slightly higher but produces a lower impact to our community, then that option is the one that should be selected instead of a shorter loan term such as 20 years with a slightly lower interest rate, because the impact to the community is going to be higher initially. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more in a moment. In talking about reducing the loan amount, we are really asking for you to look at the efficiency of the project that you're looking at. So we're also understanding that we recognize a 30-year loan term potentially allows for debt stacking in our long-term planning, but we all agree that we cannot predict the future and what 30 years is going to bring for us. So to have a fear of a potential debt stacking at year 23 or 27 is, in our opinion, not a good reason to dismiss a 30-year loan term if that means that we can have a lower impact to our residents today. Okay, let's see, where am I next here? Then we wanted to really ask that you recommend that you look at funding to meet the current project only. So truly analyze what portions of the project are necessary for today, and see if putting the segments that you're planning on for future expansion and growth, just really analyze those and see if those are necessary or if we can put those on hold for right now. If there's a way that, by doing that through value engineering, through really identifying the necessity of those components, is there a way to reduce this loan amount? We do absolutely appreciate the town's commitment to planning, and we've seen that over how the town is really focused on planning and not just making rash decisions. So we really encourage and recommend that you actually also use this planning approach to make efficient use of the space. and utilize that space efficiently. So if you don't need a 2,400 square foot building and a 2,000 square foot building would work, and how you can use that space more efficiently, and that could save some costs, then please do so. Boy, once we went through all the legal requirements, the engineering and the scope of the project, and we had a much better understanding of how this all worked and how it all gets put together. And really the legal requirements were a big one. We dug deep into fees and rates. Dave Myer has a fantastic tool and model that he shared with us that helps in putting all of those components together. And initially we wanted to come back here and provide you with a clear fee and rate schedule that we could get behind and support. But as I mentioned a little bit ago, we learned really quickly that just wasn't feasible, and it just was not possible for us to do. There were too many components in that decision that were outside of our scope and ability. And we worked with his model extensively. I mean, I cannot tell you personally the hours that I would change things around to see what the impacts were to everybody. But we really identified that a 30-year loan option provided that the town the ability to have smaller incremental increases than a 20-year loan model. The 20-year loan model really increased those rates to the community pretty immediately, whereas the 30-year model allowed an opportunity to amortize those costs and have more gradual, more realistic increases. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we really felt that the setting and determining that those rates and fees really should be the responsibility of the trustees in the town. So our recommendation is that after that debt structure is identified, that 20-year, 30-year loan term, where that interest rate is, and the final project costs are really honed down after you get to a clearer vision of what the upgrades to this treatment plant might be, that the fees and rates to cover these costs are implemented in an incremental stair-step manner, and that these increases be really thought about and be realistic. And we believe that that will help our community overall with slower increases to the sewer rate costs. We're also recommending that we review these annually to help minimize that impact. We don't know that in 3 years, there's a legislative change that provides additional funding that could, help us make some changes to those rates. And once again, I'm just going to state that we really, really recommend that you continue the use of roundtables in the annual planning and budget process. The transparency through the use of these roundtables and bringing back this information to you is invaluable. And that education we received through this was invaluable to all of us. Wow, it was pretty enlightening to all of us to learn about the budget process and to see all of the different fees and funds that go to really make that sewer fund work. One of the components that we found that we did, finance department, Kelly Hodling, Patty Garcia worked really hard and did a lot of research for us was on the administrative fee back to the sewer fund. So we are recommending that the town really review the general fund and the sewer fund to seek out those areas where we can really kind of tighten them up. How can we be very good stewards to our community to make sure that the costs that are going into the sewer fund are very realistic and very tight, that there's no waste. So, and then be transparent about what's in these fees. We came to learn that while it took some digging, we were learning it, but that transparency helps with that understanding a lot. So then the education on that information is going to be really helpful as well. So most of our recommendations as we went through this 2-month process was really focused on looking at the current needs of our community and the current impacts, but we also looked at what's going to happen down in the future. And the best way at this point for today was this resolution recommendation that we're bringing to you. So, and this is directly in regards to the sinking fund. So we recommend that the Town of Wellington Board of Trustees pass a resolution to confirm the intent of the sinking fund to be used for sewer fund specific expenses, which would include CIP, to pay ahead for future expansion and unexpected or emergency situations. The reason and concern behind this that we all agreed upon was, let's make sure we can protect that fund today, because in the future, for whatever future needs we might need or might have. So we would recommend that this resolution be passed by you. Again, we want to thank you all for this experience and for asking us to participate. And I believe there are several of us that have been willing to be on the panel here this evening, and we are available to answer any further questions or provide clarification for you.
Thank you very much, Anita. Appreciate the work that you and your team put in, the time. It's not an easy subject
No.
to be involved with, and that's why we asked for you. We need the help, okay? We need other eyes on it. We're exhausting everything that we can do, and no idea is a bad one, all right? And next week, we have a work session coming up on this to dive into this again. I would hope that you and your team might be available to come. Okay,
I'll be there.
We really want to attack this thing as best we can, and to do the best that we can. And I like the ideas you brought up. I like looking at these other loan structures. I like identifying that seeking fund. I like everything. So I hope you can be there. So with that being said, I appreciate the time and the effort from the citizens and the board members that were there. I'd like to turn it over to our board for a couple of quick comments, if you have, for our team, board members. Please speak up if you'd like to share anything or ask anything.
Hi, I have a couple comments and questions. First of all, I want to thank you all for your time commitment. I know that this was a significant amount of time that you spent on it. And I think that says a lot in itself to describe the complexities of the situation that we're dealing with. So I appreciate your dedication to the community, your enthusiasm for helping everyone, and being super engaged. So first of all, I wanted to provide the thanks and admiration for you guys to undertake this responsibility. So I also want to give a little background to the Citizen Roundtable. Although this is a known process, I was one of the trustees that got to attend the Colorado Municipal League conference this last year. It was a very intense, multiple day workshop styled training that we got to go and learn the best practices of communities all across Colorado. Because we're not the only ones dealing with this issue, or many of the issues that Wellington faces are not unique to Wellington, unfortunately. Those are issues that are all across the state. And we get to experience things that went well, experience things that have not gone well for a lot of communities, and then kind of get an idea of trending concerns as well. But one of the best pieces that we brought back for actionable items that we can do right now, and I mean, this was weeks, very few weeks after we got this best practice recommendation, was initiating a citizen roundtable, which, based on your feedback and participation, I would say already has been an extreme success. So again, thank you for participating. And I think, and from my perspective, this is an amazing model that we should apply to multiple items across the town to make sure that we not only get facts and figures to the trustees, but so those can be shared and there can be a consolidated discussion and brainstorming amongst leaders within our community to come up with solutions and get innovative ideas and creative ways to maybe do something that we hadn't considered, because more minds, right, together can do more. So I think that's fantastic. We talked a little bit about next steps, recommended resolutions. I'm curious from the members of the citizen group here, what you personally would want to do to continue to participate in this topic and others. Is this something that you would like to participate in other roundtables? Do you want to see this issue through all the way and continue with this process? I would just love to get your feedback on the process itself and what you think the next steps are. So that's my first question. And again, thank you.
I can answer. I don't know if others are on from our group or not. I would be more than happy to continue to see this through. And I believe that engaging willing participants through the community in roundtables on other topics moving forward is a fantastic idea. And I think that that should rotate through different individuals, so it's not always the same residents providing input and giving their feedback. By having that really opened up to the community to be involved, I think is going to help through with the education process, that community engagement. And I felt like that was very important to have, especially on a topic like this, where it is so impactful to people's, to all of our wallets at the end of the day. The manner in which this roundtable was performed, the way we had this, we had a mediator. She did a beautiful job in helping us stay on track and helping us track our questions and helping us keep all of our documents in order, because especially on this topic, there was a lot to review.
I might jump in as well. One, I would echo what Anita said. It was a great opportunity. And I really enjoyed working with everyone that was on the roundtable. And it was a really great, diverse group of people with different backgrounds, different views on a lot of different things. One, I would definitely, for myself, I would love to see this through. I'd like to see the recommendations that we made really fleshed out. And, we worked really, really hard on all of this and looking at different ways to reduce the overall expenditures of the fund so that then we could also reduce the rates, because we wouldn't have to come up with so much money to acquire that, debt service payment every year. And I think it would be a great tool to use in a lot of different aspects of struggle. And I think even just based on the community comment, there's a lot of people concerned about spending and things like that. I would echo, I think it was Cheryl that said, about having some type of advisory board. I think it's super helpful. I sit on the advisory board for the budget committee for the school district. And, there's only one or two people who don't work there that can really point out questions that maybe they don't see, because when you're in it, you don't see all the things that are going on. And the same with the rates. I think it helped a lot. I think most of us came in thinking, well, we'll figure out a way so there won't be a rate increase. And we left going, wow, it is what it is. I mean, it's absolutely necessary because we can't not have this facility, but maybe we can provide some different creative ways to minimize the rates now, and each year looking for new and great ways to minimize the impact of the loan on the citizens, so that, hopefully a lot more minds, the better, really. I mean, we all brought different ideas to the table and it was a great learning experience. So thank you for that.
I just wanted to jump in real quick also. I sat on the Citizens Commission also, and it was a great opportunity. I think, Trustee Kinney, it's definitely important that as these commissions are created, that people continue to service or be on it as long as possible, because it allows us to make sure that our goals get accomplished, and that if we have questions, because we spent so much time on it, if there's questions from the trustees and staff, that we're able to answer those and make sure those goals come to fruition. So I think it's important that those, as members of this commission, that we stay around as long as possible. So.
Yeah, I would agree with the previous roundtable members. And the only thing I would request is a little more runway. We had a pretty short runway over holiday, which made it difficult. And so as you're considering additional roundtables, just think about the timing of those and make sure you give those groups as much time as possible.
I love all that feedback, and I think everything you provide is so valuable. I don't disagree with anything that was presented tonight. They're all wonderful ideas, and I can't wait for us to pursue them further, and then for you guys to follow up on those too. One last thing is I do have a quick call to action for this group. Obviously, you all are dedicated and very, at this point, probably experts on this scenario above and beyond most people. So, but what I ask you to do as the citizens involved in this roundtable is share that knowledge as much as possible. We do as much as we can. We all have different methods of sharing this information. It's not enough, absolutely. And that's why we did the citizen roundtable, is that we were hoping that we'd have more advocates of the education. So you mentioned education is one of the top items, and you all are now equipped with the most education on this. So my last item and hope is that as we pursue your plan and take all of these recommendations very seriously, that you then live through the education piece and advocate for that knowledge and education and share with everybody and anybody what you've learned. Encourage them to engage too, and maybe be involved in other citizen initiatives. So citizen roundtables, sorry, that word's not what I meant to say. But thank you again so much. And I'll leave it to other trustees now.
Thank you, Trustee Kenny, and roundtable members. Other board members, comments?
Yeah, I would just like to commend and thank the Citizen Round Group. I think that this was a really great opportunity for us to find some solutions to a very difficult problem in a really creative way. And to get the community involved in that gives them some accountability as well in the decisions that we have to make that impact them. So it's been fantastic. I got some great takeaways from the presentation this evening, things that I'd had questions about, like terms of loans, or do citizens prefer to have the rates happen gradually over time or just swiftly all at once, rip that Band-Aid. So there was some really great takeaways. Thank you so much for all of the time, energy, dedication that you put into this. And I can definitely appreciate wanting to have a longer runway to get prepared and kind of take off with something like this. It can seem kind of like a whirlwind and very overwhelming at first, especially if it's the first time you're really getting involved or engaged in something like this. Something to keep in mind is that sometimes things like this, like wanting to stay engaged long enough to see things come to fruition in local government and government in general, it takes forever for things to really transpire and come to fruition. So having that dedication to want to be involved for the long run is pretty fantastic. So thank you so much for your dedication to the project and for the information. I took it very seriously and look forward to hearing what you guys come up with in the future.
I'd like to make one additional comment for the board to consider. I realize there's still some heat around the water rates. I believe it's possible that some of the recommendations we're making relative to the wastewater, which is a totally different issue, particularly around incremental rates, may be something worth considering to maybe circle back on water, and maybe the water rates can be adjusted and follow the same model we're recommending for wastewater. May not be possible, but I just like to put that out there.
I think that's absolutely fair to say, and I appreciate that comment very much.
And I would just like to add on to what Stephen said. Like, one of the big things is that you have the ability to grant money back to those funds within a certain amount. And Patty can tell you more about that. She's pretty much an expert now. And she should get credit because she's the one that told us about it once we were really asking a lot of questions. So she really dug right in and found a really cool solution. And it's not, I mean, I think it's like 10% of the revenues of the fund can then be granted from the general fund to the fund. But you know, that's still, I mean, even if it's $130,000, it's still $130,000 the citizens don't have to cover. And those kinds of things can then apply to the water fund as well. So, you know, just a hopeful solution that, you know, we don't want to have to be paying $900 a month for water, you know, 20 years from now. So.
Anyone else? Okay, roundtable folks, we're having a work session next week.
Mayor, I
Please
would
come.
like to,
Yep, Trustee Gator.
sorry, I wanted to make sure everyone else got a chance. So first off, again, I did want to echo the thanks. And for those of you who may not be aware, yes, this was a very short runway, as Stephen amended to. And I appreciate all of you being willing to step in because, I mean, Patty, myself, and Trustee Kinney were sitting in the meeting. We walked out the door and said, we have to do this when we get home. And unfortunately, you know, we knew we had a short period of time and it was a question mark. Are we going to find citizens who are willing to step up in? I want to thank all of you who did, because you stepped up in a big way. And not only did you step up and take meetings, you guys took these over the holiday. So you don't realize they met in November and December when everyone else is going off and visiting and vacationing. These people were sitting down here asking questions, doing homework and getting stuff done. And, you know, and I can't speak for everyone, but I know one person actually canceled an event that they had tickets to. And I'm sure that was across the board. People canceled things they had planned to be able to sit down and get this done. So I really appreciate what you guys put together. And you brought, and that was when I said to the person I appointed, I said, my goal is that you guys bring us things that we haven't thought of yet. Because, you know, we've been looking at this a long time and you guys have. There's so much great stuff in here. And that is one of my questions to staff is I would like to make sure that we're quickly getting back to the board. How do we begin to implement on these things and make these happen? The other question that I had just kind of for the roundtable is I noticed one of the items you guys had in the values, which it didn't really get fleshed out here, was you said we want to really make sure there's equity in how the rates are put together. Could you expound a little bit on what, because I know there's so many different definitions out there. So I kind of want to understand what is it exactly that you guys were targeting with that. So I kind of know what it is that you're asking us as a board to consider in our decision making.
Oh boy, was that a topic of discussion. How do we define this one word?
Wyatt defines it better than anybody.
I was like, if anyone has that picture, that was the best definition.
Yeah. Oh, I probably have it somewhere.
Yeah. While someone's looking for that, I mean, at the end of the day, Trustee Gator, I think, you know, the consensus of the group was it's not about equal, because equal, you know, people doing things in an equal way doesn't necessarily make it equitable, right? Some people may be able to do more. And they should consider that. Some people may not be able to do more, but they can do what they can. And so that's really the equity difference. And there is a great image. If we can get that to the board, I think that would really help.
Does it have a fence?
It does.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know. I haven't seen exactly the one, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
I have it. If anybody wants to see it, I can share my screen real quick.
Yeah.
Garrett.
I'm trying. Let's see. Can you guys see that?
That's the one I thought it was. Good. Yeah, I love this one.
So, and I think we just thought it was important that, like, from a rate standpoint, you know, that if it's a percentage, that it's that percentage applies, you know, across the board, because a $15 increase to, you know, a resident on fixed income versus a $15 increase to Cameron, that's not very equitable, right? That's equal. But the impact is, there's a huge disparity in that impact. Okay. So
Got it. So that's perfect. And then I did also want to highlight, and just for the board, and I think this is really important as we're going to these discussions next week, but Lisa, I think, highlighted something that was huge. And, she said, is even if it's small, it makes a difference. I know, as the mayor has said many times, we are out there looking for those $100,000 million grants. And if we can find them, we're going after those. But I think we really do need to look at the little things, and hey, if it's $20,000 here, if it's $30,000 here that we can clean up in the budget of those funds, I think that's something that we need to do, because it might seem small, but I think it's going to make a big impact for the residents, because I know we look at things at a very large picture, but several people have said that through the presentation here. Even if it's just the little things that you guys are doing, I think that's going to make a big impact. So I think we need to definitely make sure that goes into our process. I know we're looking at revamping some of the budget stuff now that we know that we can potentially move money around. So that's going to be looking at, okay, where do we shift things around? And I think we're looking at, even if things are small, how do we make those adjustments? Thank you again, all of you.
One last comment real quick is, in addition, of course, to our dedicated citizens that were involved in the roundtable, we had multiple staff members at each one of those meetings as well, doing late night working, as Anita mentioned, for late into the night, as well as all that research outside of the meetings, in addition to your homework and those kind of things, and providing those documentation. I do want to just highlight the talent and passion and dedication of our staff, who obviously has the very best interests of our community in mind and is willing to go the extra mile to make sure that we can find the best solution. So I do want to give a round of applause to our staff too, because we have amazing staff who are very talented and care a lot about our community.
I agree.
I do have to say, Dave.
Yes.
I just got a shout out to Dave Myer for the third time tonight. Holy smokes. He helped us understand things in a way that can't even describe. So thank you. And now I am finished for my evening.
All right. All of you did a great job. Thank you very much for participating. Now, next week, we're going to open this can of worms up. Okay.
Yep.
So please be there. All right. We've got to find that money. That's where it's at. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's not over. A long way to go. Okay. That being said, we're going to move forward. Item D, we have a consent agenda to think about. The minutes from the November 23rd, 2021 and the December 14th regular Board of Trustees meetings, consent agenda. Are there any issues with this, or can I get a motion to approve these minutes?
I probably have a couple corrections. I wasn't available for the November 23rd meeting, but under the consent agenda and also under the action item, it says Trustee Jerome moved to approve the consent calendar. And then under the action item, it's Trustee Whitehouse moved to approve the consent calendar. I don't think those are correct.
I will take a look.
Okay.
Get them corrected.
Anything else? Okay, with those corrections in mind, can I get a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda for the, hold on a second here, November 23rd and December 14th, 2021 regular Board of Trustee meetings.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay. Action items. Number one, going to talk about a public meeting, the wastewater treatment plant expansion. Dave Myer is going to talk about the particulars of what this presentation is about. Dave, you want to take it?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Shout out to Anita. Thank you very much for those compliments, but it was indeed a team effort. The entire Public Works crew and administrative staff were involved with preparation of those financial analyses. But thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board, and members of the public joining in. I'm Dave Myer, staff engineer, town of Wellington. I have a presentation here that I believe I'm sharing. Okay, this is a public meeting pertaining to the town's, excuse me, wastewater treatment expansion project. Just for clarity, I wanted to mention that this presentation only deals with the town's wastewater treatment plant, not its water treatment plant, and that expansion. This is a separate project. Some quick introductions. As I mentioned, I'm Dave Myer with the town. I'm backed by Bob Gowing and Megan Smith, Public Works Director and Deputy. Nathan Ewert is also here, as well as Mike Flores, who is the superintendent at the wastewater plant. In a moment, you'll be hearing from Kyle Snyder and later Laura Myer, both from Jacobs. Jacobs Engineering is the design engineer for the expansion. Kyle is the project manager for that, and Laura headed up the environmental assessment, which she'll be speaking to soon. The objective of this public meeting is to fulfill state requirements to inform citizens and solicit public input concerning the project needs assessment and the environmental assessment. Both these documents have been submitted to the state on behalf of this project. The P&A provides detail on the project, its needs, alternatives that were considered, components, and funding mechanisms. And the environmental assessment, or EA, details any environmental impact from the project. Moving to the agenda we have tonight, we'll provide an overview of the project and then discuss the plant's improvements. We'll also provide information on the project's cost and briefly mention potential impact to sewer utility rates. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Kyle Snyder from Jacobs, who will continue this presentation, starting with the project location. Kyle? Kyle, you'll have to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, sorry, buttons appeared, and I think I'm good now. So here's just an orientation map of the town's wastewater utility service area. This is an area that was updated recently as part of the North Front Range Water Quality Planning Association approval of the town's wastewater utility plan. So in the magenta is the current town service area, and the remainder of that boundary is area that is expected to have growth in some form or fashion over the next 20 years in a portion of that area at least. All right, go ahead, Dave. So we want to speak to the purpose of the project and why it is needed. And there are really three drivers for the project, and for projects of this nature, that these are three that are very typical, and the town of Wellington has all three right now. So we do need to address capacity issues for the wastewater treatment plant that have resulted from population growth, and we need to be able to maintain compliance with state regulations for water quality, and also replace aging infrastructure. The existing plant is now 19 years old, and some of the facilities and equipment are at the end of their useful life. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on all three of those coming up here. So firstly, for population growth, this is a graph showing in the recent 6 or 7 years what growth has looked like within the town, and then per the town's planning efforts, what that growth may look like over the next 20 years. So it's a best guess for sure, but it's an educated guess and projection, and that's what we are basing the needs for the future of the town on. Okay. So this graph here, the horizontal lines show the plant capacity in terms of millions of gallons per day of wastewater. So the purple one on the left is the current plant capacity, and the dots are the projected population. So as you can see, we're getting very close to capacity with the existing plant, and with the increment of expansion that we've selected for the project, that would take the capacity for the town projected out for the next approximately 20 years, plus or minus, of course, based on actual growth. But 20 years is a typical planning length that would be used in projects like this. Okay, Dave. We do have regulatory requirements, as I mentioned, and the most important of those regulatory requirements for the future are going to be nutrient removal for the wastewater. So wastewater contains nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. And if there's too much nitrogen and phosphorus released to either the receiving stream, which is the case here for the town of Wellington's plant, which discharges to Box Elder Creek, or a lake, river, groundwater, the too many nutrients in that water can lead to excess growth, for example, in the creek, growth of algae that can reduce the oxygen in the stream, which is bad for fish, wildlife, and can create dead zones of no oxygen that impact not only wildlife, but also the use of those waters for recreation. Go ahead, Dave. And then finally, we have aging infrastructure. So this is an aerial view of the plant. As I mentioned, the plant's 19 years old. We are trying in all instances to utilize existing facilities as they can be used. And so nearly all the facilities that are part of the plant now will be used in the future. There are a couple of areas in the plant that have already seen a doubling of capacity from the last treatment plant expansion. So for example, the headworks building, and it just physically cannot take the increased flows. So we are going to have to replace the headworks building. But we will reuse nearly all of the other facilities. There are some issues that need to be addressed, equipment that is, as I mentioned, at the end of its useful life, and some other upgrades that are needed. I won't go into all the details here, but after 20 years in this type of a setting, this type of environment, there are needs for some improvements. So what alternatives did we consider for the project? So first of all, we took a look at a no action alternative, and we very quickly came to the conclusion that was not an option due to growth that has happened in the near past, which has put the treatment plant at very close to its capacity, and then growth that's projected out into the future. And in addition, those other two drivers that I just mentioned, the aging infrastructure, which would need to be addressed regardless of any other items that are needed, and then the regulatory requirements. So no action is not really feasible. Another item that we looked at was, could we optimize the existing facility? Could changes be made that would allow the facility to continue without a major capital expenditure, major improvement? And because of those increased flows and loads, and because of the changing regulatory requirements for nutrient removal, the current plant just cannot handle those increases in flow and loading. So that was not an option. Another possibility that we always review for plant expansions are, could the town of Wellington's wastewater treatment needs be consolidated with another nearby entity? And could there be some efficiencies there in going in together with another entity for treatment facilities? The closest two facilities to the town's wastewater treatment plant are the Box Elder Sanitation District wastewater plant and the City of Fort Collins Drake wastewater treatment plant. Both those facilities are very close to each other as the crow flies on the east side of Fort Collins. Unfortunately, the length of pipeline that we would have to build between the town's wastewater plant and either of these two wastewater plants is on the order of about 8 miles. And that would be quite an expensive endeavor in and of itself, just to build that pipeline. And then you would have to compensate either Box Elder Sanitation District or the City of Fort Collins, essentially with a large tap fee for providing treatment. So we felt that was going to be, when you included the cost of the pipeline, a much more expensive option for the town. And so finally, we have an option of expanding and replacing as needed the existing facilities. Most of the facilities, as I said, will be reused. We do need to add to them to expand the capacity. And that was the option that was selected. So in terms of the preferred alternative, this is what those improvements will look like, and again in an aerial view. So the brown boxes are the new facilities, either buildings or basins, to provide both liquid treatment for the wastewater and then solids handling for the solids that are produced in the process. The photos are some of the existing facilities, and there will be improvements to those, as I mentioned. So all of these facilities will fit on the existing site that the town purchased 20 plus years ago, and there's still room off to the west that for the future beyond the next 20 years for additional facilities should they be needed. And next we move on to costs. Are you coming back in at this point, Dave?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. So speaking to the project costs now, so based on the 60% design package that was received from Jacobs in October, our contractor estimated the cost at about $40 million. That contractor, by the way, is Maltz Construction, and they're based out of Windsor. 90% package was received from Jacobs, the 90% package, on December 8th, so a little over a month ago, and the corresponding 90% cost estimate is currently under review. That estimate will be based on competitive bidding for subcontractors, equipment, and materials to obtain the most robust estimate that we can get. Discussions with Jacobs, Maltz, and town staff, Public Works, are ensuing as we work through our value engineering items, make equipment and subcontractor selections in order to get that 90% cost finalized. I should also mention that the engineering costs for this project are being funded directly from the town sewer fund. Monies in that fund have been building over the past several years precisely for this intention. So how to fund these improvements? So as most of you probably know, we are moving forward with a low interest state revolving fund, or SRF loan, for construction costs. Completion of the aforementioned PNA is a requirement of obtaining that loan. Those SRF monies, they're sourced from the federal government, which triggers the need for the environmental assessment. Down below, key steps of the project thus far include filling out the state's eligibility survey, also known as the intended use plan, which was done in 2020 and updated again in 2021. A pre-qualification application was submitted and approved last April. Then the PNA and EA were recently completed and submitted to the state last October and November, respectively. The actual application for the loan is due this Friday, the SRF application. Pending approval, that loan will be executed and closed in early March, which allows us to initiate construction in April or May of this year. So in an effort to reduce costs as much as possible, and as part of the SRF loan application, the project team prepared and submitted an application for the state's Green Project Reserve. That's an initiative offered for including green infrastructure, water, energy efficiencies, and other green items into the project to at least a 15 to 20% of the project cost. That could bring us a reduction in interest rates on the first $3 million of the loan, potentially down to 0.5%. That application has been submitted and is currently under review by the state. As far as impacts to the sewer rates, based on the financial spreadsheet model that the town has developed and has been continually adjusting, examining, and updating, we're expecting sewer rates to range from $45 to $55 per month. And that's a combination of the base rates and the usage rates. Impact fees, those charged to developers were increased last year to $9,700 and anticipated to remain through 2022, through this year. Those impact fees are expected to increase in future years as well. The timeline, as of this evening, pertaining to the rates, we're expecting board approval of the rates sometime in February, with approved increases showing up on May's utilities bill for the residents. At this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Laura Myer from Jacobs, who will walk us through the environmental assessment. Laura, are you there?
Dave, Laura is connected to the meeting.
Okay.
But I don't know if she still needs to be promoted to be a speaker.
Okay, I believe she was promoted. Crystal, if you would please, you might need to re-promote her. Laura, you'll see a little window pop up on your screen that says allow promotion or something to that effect. Just click accept. Let's give her a minute here to see if she can get logged in.
Perfect. I did get that. Thank you, Dave.
Okay.
Okay, so the environmental assessment, which is referred to as an EA, evaluated the impacts of expanding the wastewater treatment plant. And in the EA, we look at both beneficial and adverse impacts of the proposed expansion. We also look at long-term impacts and short-term impacts associated with the construction. And in the next few slides, I'll summarize the results of the EA, and we'll start with the project benefits. The benefits of the proposed expansion are that it would address the deficiencies of the current plant, which Kyle went over. The aging facilities would be replaced. The new plant will handle increased demand from population growth. The proposed updates will also enable the plant to comply with the new, more stringent effluent standards. The new plant will also be more energy efficient, and the proposed updates will improve the day-to-day operations and maintenance of the plant. So let's talk a little bit about the long-term impacts of expanding the plant. Next slide. One impact of any construction project is the commitment of resources needed to build it, and I'm referring to capital, manpower, and materials. And Dave covered the cost of the project. In the EA, we found there would be no direct impacts to most environmental resources evaluated, and these are listed on the right column of this slide. The improvements to the plant are occurring within the town's existing property, which really limits negative effects to the environment, but there are some impacts documented in the EA. So the other direct environmental impacts of the project are related to air quality and the Box Elder Creek floodplain. The eastern edge of the town's wastewater treatment plant property is within the regulated floodplain for Box Elder Creek. A few of the buildings of the plant are within the floodplain, so they will be raised at least 2 feet above base flood elevation, and the town will obtain a floodplain development permit from the county. Looking at air quality, as the plant processes more wastewater from the town's growing population, certain air emissions will increase. And none of these emissions are criteria pollutants regulated for public health concerns, but there are state requirements related to ammonia emissions. And to meet these requirements, the contractor will provide an air pollution emission notice to the Colorado Department of Public Health, or CDPHE. Indirect impacts were also evaluated in the EA, and these are associated with future development in areas that will be served by the wastewater treatment plant. And urban development has some inherent impacts. For example, undeveloped land that might currently be used for agriculture or provide wildlife habitat could be lost to residential or commercial development. Urban land also tends to contribute more stormwater runoff than natural vegetated ground surfaces, which can be a water quality concern. And more urban development tends to generate more traffic and pollutants related to cars. The town's municipal code and ordinances, along with the town's comprehensive plan, serve to manage these types of development related impacts. Next slide. The other types of impacts considered in the EA are short-term impacts associated with construction, and these include things like noise and dust from construction activities. Stormwater runoff from construction zones can also be a concern, and these types of impacts are managed through control measures in the contractor's requirements. Next slide. So this presentation has summarized the information about the project from the project needs assessment and the environmental assessment. And for anybody who would like to review these documents, they're available at the town offices or online on the town's website. And these documents have been available for review for the last 30 days, and they'll continue to be available for those who want to review more detailed information about the wastewater treatment plant expansion. Next slide. If you have comments on the EA, the PNA, or just general comments about the wastewater treatment plant expansion, there are a couple ways you can share your input. Next slide. At the end of this presentation, the town will take comments and questions, so you're welcome to share your input this evening. If you prefer, you can also provide written comments to CDPHE. And CDPHE is the state agency who administers the loan program the town is using for the wastewater treatment plant expansion. They have reviewed the PNA and the EA prepared by the town. They will also review the public comments received at this hearing. And based on all of this information, if they find there are no significant environmental impacts that would result from the treatment plant expansion, they will issue what is called a finding of no significant impact, or a FONSI. And the FONSI documents CDPHE's decision and is the final step to gaining environmental clearance for the project. CDPHE will post a notice in the Coloradan when the FONSI has been issued, and at that point, the public will have 30 days to provide comments on the project. At this point, I think I'll pass it back to Dave.
Okay, thanks, Laura. So as wrapping up this presentation, next steps for the project include the SRF loan application this Friday. Final design is expected to be complete in March, along with the SRF loan approval. As mentioned, we're on track to start construction as soon as possible after the loan closing, probably April, May. The construction schedule has the expansion being completed in early to mid 2024, probably May or June for substantial completion. That brings this presentation to a close. I'll turn it back to the mayor, who will let everybody know when and how to provide public comments. And thanks for your attention, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Dave, for the presentation, and Jacobs and all the people working with you. Board members, any quick comments for our staff presentation?
Did have just a couple of questions. Mayor, did you want to do those now or after public comment? Whatever your preference is.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I just had a couple of quick questions. You mentioned that the application is due on Friday. I know one of the comments that was brought up by our citizen roundtable was looking at the interest rate versus term of loan. Do we have to have all that into the application that goes in on Friday? Or is that something we can work out after Friday? Because that
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll answer it. Megan, jump in here, please. If you need. The answer is there's a box that we put in a loan amount for, and the box that we put in for the assumed interest rates and the loan terms, but those can be changed prior to the loan closing in March.
Okay. Got it. So you guys can put something in for the application on Friday. We can have discussion and then we can change that number based on, okay, great, perfect.
Yes,
That's what I
absolutely,
need to know.
prior to the loan closing in March.
Okay, great. The next question I had, I know you guys mentioned you're pursuing the green project, which and again, if it helped reduce loan interest, that's great. The question I have though is one, is that based off of what we've already done, or are we going to have to make changes to the projects that are actually going to drive up the cost of the project and operation costs?
No, those costs, Trustee Gator, in those facilities are already implemented into the project. We started looking at the Green Project Reserve application as we were completing 60%, advancing towards 90% design. So all of that stuff has already been implemented into design and the cost. So there will not be any kind of impacts to the construction costs of the project.
Okay, so kind of the follow-up question. I'm glad you guys are on top of that. Are we paying more now than we would have initially had we not been considering? Okay.
No, the answer to that is no, Trustee Gator. These efficiencies are inherent to the project in terms of pumps, efficiencies, VFDs, and all those items that I listed on that slide are incorporated into the project.
Great. And then the final question I had was in regards to the change in the floodplain and air quality. What defines minor impact? I mean, is it something like, I know we talked about emissions and things like that. Is that going to be something that people are going to start noticing strange smells coming from the wastewater plant, or minor is a very vague definition?
Kyle, could you respond to that, please?
In terms of the floodplain, we are following the Larimer County process for development in the floodplain, and the effect of what we are building will not affect the floodplain, will not make it worse for others. Okay. For example, in terms of the air quality, and Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the term minor that you mentioned is defined by the state for different parameters like particulate matter and NOx and SOx and some of those air quality parameters in terms of numbers of pounds per day that are emitted. So they define what's a minor emitter versus what's a major emitter, and the type of permit that they grant is dependent on how many pounds per day that you're putting out. So that's a state definition.
Okay. So what is the impact to residents? So if I'm a resident of Wellington within a couple of miles of the plant, am I going to start, smelling things that I never smelled before? Are my kids going to start getting sick? I mean, am I going to notice anything? Like, what does that mean? I mean, I know the state has their definition, but if we're talking about the residents, what does that mean to them?
We're not changing any of the processes at the plant. So in terms of odors, there shouldn't be any big change there. Laura, any other thoughts on any other air quality parameters?
Yeah, no, you're correct. So it wouldn't be any kind of a perceptible change as far as air quality. And as I mentioned, the emissions from the plant are not things that are regulated as any kind of public health concern.
Great, thank you very much. Those were the only questions I had, Mayor.
Good questions, Trustee Gator. Anyone else? Okay. No other questions for the board members. Let's open up to the public. Would the public like to weigh in at this time and ask any questions on the processes that are going on with the wastewater treatment plant? Crystal, can you monitor that?
Yes. One second.
looks like we have Sherelle.
Okay, Sherelle.
Hello, guys. Sherelle Teets, 4525 Ingalls Drive. So on my question, and I just don't feel that it was maybe answered completely as far as the emissions goes for air quality. So are you saying that it's not going to be any more than what it's producing now? Or is there a possibility of the emissions being produced is higher than what it was previously? That's one of my questions. The other one is have you contacted the newer residents that are living in the area to let them know that this might be a possibility of this coming, the construction traffic? I know there's a brand new subdivision over in that area towards the east. So my curiosity comes is it something that we've reached out and done due diligence in letting people know what's going on and letting them present questions if they have them? That's all I have.
So Kyle, could you respond to the air pollution potential increase? I don't believe there will be any. Can you and Laura maybe elaborate on that bit? And then Megan, if you want to step in and talk about our public outreach.
In terms of dust control during construction, the town has standards that they will require the contractor to meet. So, watering down of the gravel drive, going into the plant periodically, and for roadways around the plant that will be needed. So those are requirements that will be met. The other air emissions from the wastewater plant are going to be similar to what they are now. There are open tanks that don't produce a lot of odor, as I mentioned, and the nature of that odor would not be changing. In terms of public outreach to the citizens, I'm not sure, Dave, if the town has in sewer bills or any other flyers, website, if there's been any outreach like that or not.
Other than the outreach, that we've been announcing on our website and the public meetings we've been having in front of the board. I believe that was the extent of it. Now, as far as informing people in the area on construction, I don't believe we have done that yet. That is something that we've kind of been discussing internally before construction starts, to get out more specific flyers and information to people that live in close proximity to the plant and the construction site.
Yeah, that was the only thing I would have chimed in, Dave, about, would just be to elaborate that, as we get closer to construction, of course, we'll be notifying our nearby neighbors, make sure that it's not a surprise, as equipment is being moved in. And there'll be a lag for sure between mobilization and really starting construction efforts that would kick up that extra dust and that sort of thing.
Traffic on the frontage road, et cetera. I also elaborated a bit on the air quality and odor. So one of the things we're doing with this expansion, one of the sources of odor from the wastewater plant are the digesters. And we are covering those to help improve the process. So that should actually cut down on some of the odors. And also we're changing our dewatering process from exterior drying beds to a mechanical dewatering process. So the drying beds that you saw on some of those overhead slides that we were showing will be going away. That is a kind of a source of odor sometimes, especially in the spring. That will be going away as well.
Good. Well, I guess we just increase that public outreach when the time comes, huh?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. I like it. All the answers were pretty good. Anyone else, Crystal?
We have Hannah.
Okay, Hannah.
Hannah,
Hannah,
you will
can you
be,
hear me?
Hello?
we can hear you.
Testing. Okay, good. Sorry about that. So my comment or question was more about the changing the rates. As I understood it, a lot of people were objecting to raising the base rate. But there's the base rate that you pay every month, no matter what you use, and then there's your usage rate. And a lot of people seemed to be more okay with changing the use rate rather than the base rate, including me. I was just wondering if anyone could speak to that.
I'll jump in here, Dave. I would say, Hannah, I do not by any stretch want to imply that I'm dodging the question, but I would like to see if we can address that most directly as we move into presentations next week at a work session in the following month in February, as we really start bringing rates forward. But I will say, yes, most definitely, we are considering multiple combinations of both base rate and usage rate for the sewer rate changes, upcoming sewer rate changes. So definitely they are being considered, but I don't have a great deal of detail that I could jump into with you on this presentation tonight.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think that we've got a lot of work yet to do on that. We can't really just say what we're going to do. We're also looking at the loan terms as well. So that's going to affect everything. Anyone else?
I have no other hands raised at this time.
Okay. Let's go ahead and we'll close the public comment at this point. There's no other presentation. Questions from our board members? I'd like to thank the presenting team for all their work, and we look forward to more work to come. Okay. So thank you very much. Very detailed, good answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on. Action item 3, this is an ordinance number 02-2022. It's an ordinance vacating a 20-foot platted access easement on Lot 1, Wellington Manor, Minor Subdivision. Cody's going to talk to us about it. Go ahead.
We skipped number 2.
We did? Okay, I got ahead of that one. I'm sorry to say. Sorry, thank you for that. Okay, item 2. We're going to vacate 20-foot platted access easement on Lot 1, Wellington Manor Subdivision. Cody.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. Can everyone see the screen share?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. This is Cody Bird. I'm the planning director. This is a relatively straightforward case as far as vacation requests go. I will point out, as Trustee Knutson just caught, that this is a 2-part process. The first part is going to be a public hearing on the vacation request. And the second part, it's a separate agenda report and a separate action item, is consideration of an ordinance that, if approved, would officially vacate the easement. So this first part is a public hearing. Real quickly, I'll go over, I'm going to provide kind of the staff presentation, which is the background information and a few details pertaining to the request. And then following the staff presentation, there will be an opportunity for board members to ask any quick questions regarding the presentation. We'll then open it up to a public hearing for residents or the public to comment on this request. And then following the close of the public hearing, the applicant can respond to any of the comments if desired. Staff can provide any closing comments to address any of the public comments, and then the board would have deliberations and close the public hearing before we move on to the next agenda item. Any questions on the process? Very good. So real quickly here, I'll go through our presentation. The request is to vacate a 20-foot platted access easement on Lot 1 Wellington Manor Minor Subdivision. This is the minor subdivision is, the applicant is Isla Droman, who owns the salon on Cleveland and 5th Street. And the adjacent property owner on Lot 2, does it help if I hide this? There we go. This is Lot 1 where the salon is, and Lot 2 is on the north side. This is 5th Street here. And here's your location map showing the property of which the request is being made. As you can see on the prior screen, this dashed line is the 20-foot access easement. It dedicates access across lot 1 so that lot 2 has the benefit of public access to Cleveland Avenue. The vacation request is being submitted by Ms. Droman, the owner of lot 1, and the owners of lot 2, the Beckners, are joining in that request. I mean, they're the ones who benefit from the easement. They also are in favor of vacating it. So all parties directly affected by the easement encumbrance are in favor of the requested vacation. Staff's consideration on this from a public standpoint, lot 2 currently has public access from Cleveland Avenue. That access, in staff's opinion, would not be required in order for lot 2 to develop or redevelop. They have adequate legal access to existing public streets on Harrison Avenue, as well as 5th Street. Also in staff's evaluation, we did not find any reason that the town would need to retain any portion of the access easement for public purposes. So no needs have been identified for retaining anything, where staff was in full support of vacating the entirety of that 20-foot access easement. And here again is the image of the existing current plat showing that 20-foot easement dedication. The Planning Commission is required to conduct a public hearing and make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. At the December 6th meeting of the Planning Commission, they conducted the public hearing. And following the public hearing, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the requested vacation. That recommendation did not include any conditions of approval, such as retaining a portion of the easement. That was not required. There were no public comments that have been received by town staff at this time. So the board's action on this particular item tonight would be to conduct the public hearing, consider any testimony provided, and then following the close of the public hearing and any closing remarks from the applicant or staff, the board can then move into the next item, which is the draft ordinance that's being presented. Are there any questions on the presentation that was just provided or the nature of the request that was submitted by Ms. Droman and the Beckners?
So do you want board questions now or after public comment? I don't have many, but I just need to know when to ask them.
All right, let's hear them now. Trustee Gator, if you got them.
I would just, if I could jump in real quick, Trustee Gator, and not to take the mayor's thunder here, but if the questions are pertinent to the presentation or the process, this would be a good time to do it. If you have questions of the applicant, it might be good to do those after the public hearing portion, if that makes sense for you.
Sure. I'm good either way. I mean, the questions are, it's fairly straightforward, but I'm happy to ask it whenever's best.
Okay. I gave you the guidance. If it's presentation or procedural, this would be a good time to ask the questions.
Okay, I mean, it's based off of the procedure of what happens with the so the vacation is basically, I'm just trying to make sure I understand what it is there's a portion of their lot that currently is required to be held for access, and they will retain that land, but it will no longer be required for an access easement. They can do something else with it. Is that what's being asked, or I'm just trying to understand what vacating that means?
Sure, and that's a really great question. And my apologies if I should have provided some additional background, but you're right on the right track, Trustee Gator. When the plat was dedicated, the easement was identified and dedicated to the public to provide access from Cleveland Avenue to Lot 2. An easement is still owned by the property owner. It's not a town property. It's just the underlying ground is owned by the property owner, and it's dedicating the right to cross that property for vehicular access, pedestrian access, for the benefit of someone else. So the process in this request, vacating that easement, would not convey any property rights. It's just the ability for the public to cross Lot 1 to get to Lot 2 would no longer exist. Other types of vacations for like right-of-way, where it is property held in trust by the town for the benefit of the public, road right of way or alleys are vacated, that does convey public property to private ownership. That's not the case in this request.
Okay, perfect. That was my question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any others? Okay, Cody.
At this point, it would be prudent to move into the public hearing and see if there are any hands raised for public comment.
Crystal, got anybody who wants to talk?
I have no hands raised at this time.
Okay, we'll close the public meeting at this time. There's no other questions. What else do we need to do here, Cody?
Sure. The applicant was Isla Droman, and I can't see if she is on this call. Actually, I can see. Let me open that up real quick.
I don't see her, Cody.
And she had a couple of representatives. Tyler James is on the call. And so I guess Tyler, if he could be promoted for a second to see if there were any comments and or if anyone is on the call representing the applicant, if you wanted to raise a hand, if you did have any comments you wanted to make. It's not required, but we want to make sure you have an opportunity.
Yeah, Cody, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Tyler. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Isla does not do technology Zoom, so I was asked to be her eyes and ears this evening, so thank you. We have no further comments needed at this time.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. And staff doesn't have any closing remarks aside from the fact that we also did not receive any public comments, as I stated before. So this is a relatively straightforward request that really only impacts the two property owners. It doesn't have dramatic public impacts, but it is changing the plat, which is a town process, and that's just why this public hearing is required. So staff doesn't have any further comments.
No one else does, it looks like. Does that mean we move on, Cody?
Yep. So at this point, it would be a statement that the public hearing has been officially closed, and that is the action for this item. So we can move on to the next one.
All right, we're gonna move on to 3 then. This is the ordinance number 02-2022. The ordinance vacating the 20-foot platted access easement on lot 1, Wellington Manor Minor Subdivision. Cody?
Thanks, Mayor. There's not a specific presentation for this particular item. It is consideration of an ordinance to approve the requested vacation of the 20-foot platted access easement. There's no presentation because it's pretty straightforward. And if you'd like, I'd happily bring up any of the other prior images if you'd like to see those. But the draft ordinance was included in your agenda packet, and that is the action before the board. So you may have any discussion on it, or you may move to adopt the ordinance.
Any final comments? No. Do we need to open it to the public, Cody? Are we good?
You've already conducted the public hearing, so you can allow comments if there are any. I suspect they've already probably passed on that opportunity.
Crystal, you got anyone?
I have no hands raised.
All right, close the public meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the ordinance number 02-2022 vacating the 20-foot platted access easement on lot 1, Wellington Manor?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay. Item 4. Resolution number 01-2022. This is a resolution designating a public place for the posting of notices concerning public meetings. Crystal, you got some information for us on this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and trustees. So Colorado Revised Statutes requires that the public place or places for posting of municipal notices is designated annually on the first regular meeting of the calendar year. And this resolution fills that statutory requirement. We've designated our town's website as our public posting place. And then having town hall, the door or the bulletin board right next to the door as an alternate posting place. So this this resolution doesn't prohibit us from posting those agendas and notices in any other areas. We have been posting those at the library and at the post office as well. But this designates our posting place as our website with an alternate. And I'd be happy to answer any
Okay.
questions.
Any questions?
The only question I have is that I don't know what our plan is when we get the new town hall up and running, hopefully in the next few months. Will we need to update this ordinance at that point? Because I don't know if we're still going to be, I mean, the goal was to send everyone to the new building. So I don't know how that changes anything. I know it's an alternate, not the primary. That's the only question I have. It's just when we change buildings, do we need to revisit this ordinance at that point?
Dan, can you weigh on that?
Trustee Gator, I think you're absolutely correct. I think when Harrison House opens up, items like this may need to be revisited, but I don't think this will be the only item like that. So,
okay. Only question I got. Thanks.
So we will still have that big bulletin board outside of town hall, and we still will be using it. So I don't anticipate any changes this year. I mean, because that's on the main street where people walk. So I want to make sure that we still have a location on that main street where by Owl Canyon and stuff where people can walk by and see those notices posted. So I could anticipate maybe changing something a year from now once we're kind of settled over at the new location and people have an idea of where we're located at. But okay. I definitely want to keep our current practices in place. And then moving forward in 2023, we can identify some alternative locations.
Sounds like a good plan.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Let's open up to the public for comment, Kristen.
We have no public comment at this time.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for final thoughts, if any. I think you ought to post it in the new town hall as well. You know, personally, just might as well. If there's no other comments, why don't we go ahead and entertain a motion to approve resolution number 01-2022, the designating a public place for posting of notices concerning public meetings.
So moved.
Again.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator.
Yes.
Trustee Kenny.
Yes.
Trustee McDonald.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson.
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay. Item 5, resolution number 02-2022. This is a resolution adopting a 3-mile plan for municipal annexations. Cody, going to explain what this is again. It's something we do every year, right?
You're absolutely right, Mayor. This is Cody Bird, Planning Director. This is kind of a procedural step. It happens at the first meeting annually. What it is the state statutes require any municipality who intends to even consider an annexation of property to be brought into the town limits. We have to have a plan in place for it's defined in the statutes as the 3-mile plan, which is quite literally 3 miles from any current boundary of the town limits. If you've looked at some of the maps available and if you followed our comprehensive plan process, 3 miles is a lot further than what the town reasonably anticipates to grow, especially considering some of the physical and other jurisdictional constraints, service area boundaries, ability to serve utilities into areas 3 miles from the town limits. That's outside of our ability. So what the town has opted to do in the past instead is to meet the statutory requirement for the 3-mile area, is to adopt the town's comprehensive plan and growth management area to satisfy the limits of that which we will consider an annexation within. As another procedural clarification, whenever the town is considering an annexation, there's a set of criteria that must be met in order to actually annex it, including it has to be contiguous to the town boundaries. We have to have adequate public facilities in order to provide for services to those properties and other criteria. Largely that is identified in our comprehensive plan and in our growth management area. So adopting the GMA from the comprehensive plan satisfies this requirement for the statutes for considering municipal annexations. I did include the graphic for the current growth management area in the agenda packet, and I'll share it real quick here on the screen for reference and for public benefit. But just for reference, Highway 1 Cleveland Avenue is right here, and then curves to go into Fort Collins, and this intersection here is the Owl Canyon Road interchange, to help give you a frame of reference for the area in which we're considering. So this boundary in the blue dashed boundary and the area within is what we would consider to be the town's 3-mile plan to satisfy the intent of the statutes. Any questions regarding the area, the plan, or the requirement for the 3-mile plan to satisfy statutes?
Anyone? Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and open up public comment.
We have no hands raised.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. Any final comments, if there are any? If not, can I get a resolution or motion to pass resolution number 02-2022, the 3-mile plan?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay. Item 6, ordinance 01-2022. This is an ordinance amending chapter 2 of the Wellington Municipal Code and establishing a hearing process to address alleged municipal campaign finance complaints and violations. I think this is a technicality. Is that right, Crystal?
Yes. So when ordinance 07-2021 was adopted to address alleged campaign finance complaints, the marijuana ordinance had not been referred to the voters yet. So it ended up with the approval of the campaign finance ordinance and then the approval of the marijuana question that created 2 chapter 14s. And so this is just creating, or it created 2 article 14s. So this is moving campaign finance into its own article of article 15. There's been no changes to the context of the ordinance.
Any questions on that, board members?
I think I'm good on that. Just to be very clear on this, so we didn't correct any spelling, nothing like that, and absolutely nothing's changed other than just Article 14 to Article 15.
Just Article 14 to 15.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Let's open it up to the public.
We have no hands raised.
Bring it back to the board. Can I get a motion to approve ordinance 01-2022? It's an ordinance amending chapter 2 of the Wellington Municipal Code.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Item 7. Resolution number 03-2022. This is the resolution of the Board of Trustees appointing a town treasurer. Patty, you want to tell us about it?
You bet. Thank you, Mayor and Trustees. Patty Garcia, Town Administrator. This is a resolution appointing Victoria Runkle as the Town Treasurer. She most recently filled the same role for the Town of Erie and came highly recommended. She brings a wealth of knowledge and broad experience and expertise, which have already been made evident in the short time she's been in Wellington. I got to tell you, staff is loving having her here. I would love to give Vic an opportunity to introduce herself real quick. So I know she's online, so she can so you know what she looks like, and you can swing by and say hi to her at Town Hall sometime. She is there most days. There she is.
Yeah. So, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I've been around a lot and I'm here helping, and I always learn more than I actually bring. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a great staff. I'm very impressed with the finance staff. I'm very impressed with everyone, but the finance staff is the one I work with most days. And yes, I am there most days. So swing by and I'll be there. Thank you.
It's a pleasure meeting you, Victoria. Board
Nothing
members
further
got
to
any
add.
questions? Yeah, go ahead. No?
Nothing further
Any
to
questions?
add from staff.
Go ahead.
Welcome to the team.
Trustee Gator, got anything?
I do. Did anyone else have anything? So first off, I'm excited to have Victoria willing to step in. So my concerns are not about appointing her as the treasurer. I think that's great. My concern kind of comes back to almost 2 years ago. This was a concern that I brought up, and this kind of got highlighted a little bit in December with the resignation of our finance directors. I really think that we need to have a little bit of separation, because we kind of have these two positions. We have an appointed position by the treasurer being the or by the trustees being the treasurer, also serves as the finance director, who is employed by the town administrator. So if there's ever a conflict there, which we kind of saw a little bit of that in December, you run into this issue where people might feel like, well, I can't talk to the trustees about concerns that I have on the finances because, well, the person who signs my check, it's not the trustees that fire me, it's the town administrator that can fire me. And so I had brought up almost 2 years ago that I really think we need to look at having that as two separate positions. I've had a lot of conversations with Ms. Garcia, and we actually, she reached out to the town of Salida. I spoke with the mayor from Salida, and they actually they do have two separate positions. So they have a treasurer as a separate elected position, and then they have their finance director who is a staff member of the town. But what they also have is they have a finance committee. And what that committee does is it's kind of made up of, you have the treasurer, you've got the finance director, and then, well, if it's two different people or the same person, you have the town administrator, one or two members from the Board of Trustees, and then potentially some members of the public who sit on that. And that committee in essence acts as that, what's the word I'm looking for? That kind of safety net, right? That other eyes looking over things to make sure there's no mistakes. And for me, I know this because my wife owns an accounting company. And so she actually serves in that role. She has an organization where she essentially serves as her finance director. And then there's a treasurer who actually looks at all the reports. And will it happen all the time, right? There's a minor mistake or something like that. She entered a number wrong or something like that. And the treasurer will catch it, say, hey, you missed this, she'll fix it, all good. And so I think it's important that we have that. So I think trying to implement this whole separating out of positions right now, I think is probably a bit much to try and figure out, but I really would like to see the board maybe give direction, or to really set out to, let's really go through and explore putting together a finance committee, because I think that's something we heard even just earlier today from members of the citizens who are concerned about how is money being spent. And we've talked a lot about transparency, especially within our water and sewer funds, which are driving rates. I think having that committee would really, one, for me as a trustee, I would feel much better knowing that we have, a separate set of eyes double checking everything to make sure nothing's getting missed, and then having that reporting and accountability back to the board. So I'm fine with approving as treasurer, but I think we need to address this, because this was something that came up at the end of the year this last year. We all got an email, and that just the fact that there was a feeling of, I can't come and tell you about concerns, that is the concern I have, is we need to have that ability to have that outside look at things.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you're okay with moving forward with this action tonight, but you want to explore getting that all figured out down the road.
That is correct. Yes, because I think as long as we're going to look at moving out and saying, hey, can we implement this? And from talking to Ms. Garcia, I think it's a possibility. I don't think it's going to be a huge stretch for us to do that. But I want to make sure the board knows that I think that we need to have, we need to work on putting something else in place, because what we currently have been doing, from my perspective, is not working. The concern I had 2 years ago bore itself out this last year. So.
Vic, have you ever worked with a accountability board or anything like that before in any of your other communities?
Absolutely, almost everyone. In fact, I just finished an assignment in Erie Colorado, and I highly recommended it there. They didn't have one, but they had a very strong, well, they've had very strong ones in Renton, Washington, and in Arvada, and in Greeley, we didn't have one. And frankly, I think we should have had one, but we had several different boards. So, you know, that kind of covered it for the other boards that we had. But I had a very strong one also in San Marcos, Texas, and in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Very strong in Arkansas. And I don't want to speak for Patty, and I'm, you know, I'm interim, et cetera, but I will tell you, I think it really helps. It also helps to think about the, you know, when we're doing reports, to have that feedback and say, you know, if we did this with it or that, it would be more clear. You know, just some feedback with the finance department, because it is true. We are finance people, and sometimes we get way down in the weeds, and we know too much in a good way. I mean, you know, we want to tell you everything. It's like, well, wait a minute, yeah. So yes, I've had them in many cities. We called them either an audit committee or finance committee. In Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is one of the strongest ones I've ever had, it was an oversight audit committee, and they were very involved, and they had a lot of issues there. I'd be happy to talk about that some other time. But it was actually is an interim finance director coming in, addressing a lot of issues that had been, it was quite a problem there. But it was really great to have members of the board, you know, giving me advice and helping it. And you know, by the way, the city manager was also a member of the board of the committee. So there were no secrets. You know, I mean, it was all just out there. Mm-hmm.
That makes me feel so good that you have expertise with that. So I definitely.
And we had a member, two members of the community who happened to be auditors. I mean, they were just, you know, they're CPAs in their private world, and they happen to be on the audit committee. So they always look for citizens with some financial background to be on the committee. And they changed it over, you know, every so many years. I mean, I think it was every 4 years or something. Mm-hmm. Okay. I highly recommend it. Patty and I've talked about it a little bit. And I said, I've always, I mean, not always, because they didn't have one in Erie. I've often had one, and I like it. So.
Would you feel comfortable helping us as we try to implement and put one together for here in Wellington?
I'd be happy to give you, you know, whatever my advice is worth, and I mean that.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Other comments? Okay. Sounds like maybe we got a plan to look at something down the road. That's good. Let's open it up to the public.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. If there's no other comments, let's go ahead and entertain a motion to approve resolution number 03/2022. Resolution of the board appointing the town treasurer.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald, Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay, Victoria, thank you for being on board. Let's move on, number 8. It's a resolution number 4-2022. It's a resolution of the town of Wellington adopting the fee schedule related to marijuana licensing. Dan.
Thank you, Dan Sapienza with Mark and Olive, the town attorneys. With the passage of the marijuana referred ordinance at the November election, there's a number of kind of regulatory and administrative measures that need to be taken. One important item as we prepare to begin accepting applications, which I believe will begin on February 1st, is establishing the fees for applications for operating retail and medical marijuana facilities. The fees that can be put in place are regulated by that ordinance. There are maximum amounts, and we went through there and determined the fee schedule that's in your packet. would be appropriate. We have a lot of work to do to put in place a regulatory scheme, and there's a good amount of review of all these documents that need to be done. And so in your packet is Resolution 4/2022, and the Board of Trustees would be establishing these fees as the local licensing authority for marijuana for the town of Wellington. And this puts in place roughly it is a $5,000 new application fee for retail marijuana. It's broken out into two separate fees, and that's because one of those needs to be given to the state when the application is submitted to the state, and then it's passed down to the local level. So there's a state fee and a local fee that goes to the state when they put in that application with DORA. There's also a retail store renewal and then a medical marijuana new application and renewal fee. There are other fees listed here for transfer of ownership as well as for late renewal, and those are spelled out in that ordinance as well. These fees can be changed if they're found to be inadequate or not appropriate for the amount of work required. These can be changed by the local licensing authority. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions?
So the question I had is just where do these fees measure up to other municipalities? So I know we've got Berthoud, we've got Fort Collins that both have marijuana. Are these fees higher than theirs, lower than theirs, the same as theirs? Are these the maximum fees? Are these the minimum fees? Like where do our fees fall kind of in range?
These are the maximum. These are actually, in all cases, the maximum fees that we can charge per the ordinance in Wellington. They actually are lower in several cases than municipalities in the area. I think Fort Collins has somewhere in the range of a couple more thousand more for new applications, I believe. And also they have a annual operating fee of about, I want to say about $5,000. So Wellington's fees are actually end up being a little lower than other municipalities, but they're the maximum amount allowed by ordinance.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Okay, let's open up the public, please.
Sherelle Teets, 4525 Ingalls Drive, Wellington. I am curious on the fee schedule. So I know the standard, and doing some research, standard for an application fee here in Colorado that goes to the state is $5,000. And a license fee typically collected by a town is $2,000. So it's a total of $7,000 that's collected, not including any other fees that the actual licensing authority chooses to add on. I know that there's employee licensing fees, registration of owner fees. And I know medical marijuana, their application fees standard for the state is $300 compared to what we've requested at the $5,000 mark. So I'm just curious on why we're lowering I hate to say standards, but I just don't want to see what happened with tap fees and builders coming in and getting really decreased tap fees. I don't want to see this become the town where all of the dispensaries go, because it's the cheapest in the area to actually come and open up shop. I think as a town, we should expect the highest fees allowed to be collected, both state and town, because that sets a standard for the businesses that we will actually be having come into town to sell a drug that is still federally classified as against the law. So I think asking for the maximum fees for all of this is much more beneficial for Wellington if Wellington is going to open these. Again, the standard is $5,000 application fee, license fee is $2,000 for a total of $7,000. And that's for retail. And then you look at the medical and there's just such a huge price gap. I'm trying to figure out why we're asking more for medical than we are for retail. That's all my questions.
I'll answer a couple of those questions. As I said, the fees that are in this fee schedule are actually the maximum allowed by Wellington's ordinance passed by the voters. And so we are not lower than while we are lower than some other municipalities in the area, it's the maximum amount we can charge. Medical versus retail marijuana. Retail marijuana is listed at $2,500 for the new application, and also a $2,500 licensing fee that goes to the state, which then passes down to the local government. So actually the medical marijuana and the retail marijuana licensing, the maximum new application licensing fee there that's listed in this fee schedule is actually the same. For retail, it's two $2,500 fees, and for medical, it is one $5,000 fee. There are other fees that these dispensaries or potential dispensaries will be paying. There are a number of application fees that go to the state for a variety of different things. But in terms of what the town of Wellington can charge for its licensing authority, these are the maximum amounts.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, we have Hannah.
Okay.
Hi, so my question regarding the marijuana is, if I understand correctly, on that ballot measure for what we charge, it was also including that it could be changed at any time without voters. I was wondering if we could change that to more reflect what's typical in Fort Collins, because I would echo some of Sherelle's concerns with that, and just the fee being that much lower.
Again, these are the maximum fees, so they can be changed at any time, but they cannot go higher than these amounts. Under the ordinance, the town board can actually change the ordinance itself and allow higher fees, but that can't be done until, I believe, January 1st, 2023. So during 2022, none of those maximum amounts can be changed. If the local licensing authority determines that the amounts set in this fee schedule are actually too high to cover the costs of the local licensing authority, the local licensing authority could decrease them at any time. But again, these are the maximum amounts that are allowed by ordinance.
Okay. Anyone else?
Actually, we have no other hands raised.
Let's bring it back.
Hi,
to the
Dana
board.
Nagy.
Oh. Go ahead. Can't hear her.
I think she was talking to somebody else.
Do we even know who it is?
That was Hannah.
Okay, all right, we're bringing it back to the board if there's no one else.
Nope.
Okay, bring it back to the board for final discussion. Doesn't sound like we can make any changes till 2023.
Not to go any higher.
Not to go any higher. Anyone want to go any lower? Okay. There's no other questions or comments. Can I get a motion to approve resolution number 04-2022, adopting the fee schedule related to marijuana license?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson,
Yes.
Mayor Hammond.
Yes. Okay, item 9. This might be an interesting one here. Okay. Resolution number 05-2022. This is a resolution creating a local licensing authority pursuant to Chapter 2, Article 14 of the Wellington Municipal Code, appointing Kristen Brown as Assistant Municipal Judge to serve in that role. Dan, explain this one.
Thank you. And I believe Kristen Brown may be online. So Crystal, if you see her, if you could promote her to be a panelist, that would be wonderful. Pursuant to the marijuana ordinance allowing the sale of retail and medical marijuana that was passed on the November ballot, a local licensing authority will accept applications, approve applications, also has hearings for violations. And if there's any, if an application is declined, there's also an opportunity for a hearing there. The town board, pursuant to the ordinance, serves as the local licensing authority unless it determines that a separate licensing authority should be established, and at that point can appoint whoever or whatever organizations it wants to administer that. because this is new in the town of Wellington, and we have a short time to ramp up from the passage of that ordinance to February 1st, when we'll begin accepting applications. We've talked with Kristen Brown, who's currently the licensing authority in Commerce City for liquor as well as marijuana. We talked to her about regulations and want to bring in some of her expertise. A lot of the initial application for marijuana it's going to require new forms, new processes that we really want to get that expertise here in the town. Also, new applications are accepted administratively. So as opposed to liquor where there are hearings for a new application, if in this ordinance, if an applicant has a premise that is allowed by the setbacks and the zoning to exist, as well as complies with all of the other requirements, that application is simply rubber stamped by the licensing authority. So we wanted somebody in that role who really understands it, who really can help us write those regulations, and then on an ongoing basis serve as the local licensing authority to hold those hearings. Kristen Brown is here online. I'd love for her to introduce herself and her expertise, and maybe speak a little bit about her experience regulating marijuana in Colorado.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, everybody. My name is Kristen Brown, and as your town attorney said, I am the Marijuana and Liquor Authority in Commerce City. I've been in that role for about 3 years. And I would say that Commerce City has a pretty active licensing process. I handle on a fairly regular basis hearings related to marijuana related applications. I know the Wellington ordinance limits the licensed businesses to marijuana stores that are retail and medical related. In Commerce City, there's every license that's authorized under the state is also authorized under the Commerce City Code. So that's cultivation. There's the wide gamut of types of licenses that we handle in Commerce City. So what I've been doing after talking with Dan and with Patty is putting together some rules and regulations that I think would be applicable and for the needs of the town of Wellington. And depending on the decision of the Board of Trustees tonight, if I'm appointed in that capacity, then I would work with staff on getting processes set up, application forms organized, get these rules and procedures finished drafted, get those to Patty and Dan to review, and then with their approval, go ahead and enact those. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Board members, you have any questions for Ms. Brown?
My assumption is, Ms. Brown, is that if we were to utilize you as the authority here, we would have significantly decreased the risks of any kind of lawsuits in the future if we were to not manage forms correctly or somehow appear to politically make decisions on marijuana licensing. Would you agree that that's the case for limiting our risk for lawsuits in the future?
Well, the marijuana authority, whether that's a person that you appoint as the hearing officer, such as myself or someone else, or the town board serves as the marijuana authority like they do as the liquor licensing authority. The ordinance that's been adopted incorporates the statutory provisions at Title 44. So you would, in large part, you're following what state law requires. You pretty much brought that into the provisions of that ordinance. So as long as those provisions are followed, whether that's the town board or acting as the authority or an individual hearing officer or judge, as long as you're following what the state law provides and what the local ordinance provides, then limit of liability is certainly reduced. The forms that an applicant would have to fill out, they're state forms. So the state has those forms already. What I'm looking at is just processes in terms of what all needs to be filed at each stage, background checks, things of that nature to get all that process in place.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Other questions?
I did have a couple of questions. So Dan, these aren't specific, I guess, to Kristen, but you had mentioned earlier about not having hearings and just having it be an administrative approval. So I was a little unclear on that. Is that something that's based off of the resolution that was passed by the voters? Or would that be what would happen if we were to appoint Ms. Brown as the authority? Then it would just be administrative and there'd be no hearings. I was a little confused as to your comment around that.
In the ordinance that was passed, in section 21420D, it says the local licensing authority shall administratively approve any license application under this article so long as the conditions set forth in this article are met. So what I meant was, in approving a new license, there's no subjective hearing necessarily. It's an administrative process. But making sure that they do meet all of the requirements is really important. I think that's where Kristen can really step in and make sure that we have dotted all our I's and crossed our T's in reviewing those applications.
Got it. And so I guess the further question that I have is, I know that currently the ordinance lays out that the town board, and in the last thing that you mentioned that the decisions on whether fees are appropriate are determined by the licensing authority. So basically, if the board appoints someone else, is that we have no way to control it. That's the concern that I have, is that we then take this, something that's brand new. I totally agree we need the expertise, but then taking that and putting that to something, we as board members, we're accountable to the voters of Wellington. So if we're, if we're approving things that we shouldn't be, or we're not approving things that we should be, there's an accountability to us, to the voters, right? There's not an accountability to necessarily the licensing authority to the voters, right? They didn't vote for them, they didn't appoint them. So I am a little concerned about removing the board from that role. Is there a way to create the licensing authority that includes Ms. Brown and the board? So she's a part of that authority with the Board of Trustees, so that we're a part of that, but we can still take advantage of her expertise, but that the board is still accountable to the citizens for the process.
I think potentially that is possible, though one of the reasons we wanted to bring Kristen on in this capacity was the very short time between approval of that or new ordinance and when we have to start accepting applications. So why maybe that's something we could consider going forward. And if Kristen serves as the local licensing authority, or really anybody that's involved with marijuana applications going forward for the town of Wellington, I think there's going to be a lot of learning that happens, and possibly in the future that could be looked at. Right now, I think we have a time issue of we need to get something in place in the next 3 weeks.
Okay, and there's no way to do that with the Board of Trustees and hiring Ms. Brown to come in and put those processes together without her being the licensing authority? Is that what I'm to understand?
I think if the board wanted to hire her as a consultant, something like that, that could work. But we'd have to think about how that would work. And we think it'd make a lot more sense but we think it would be more practical to have an individual serving in that role with the expertise. And then because she's done this before, we think it will work very well.
Is there a reason we don't do this on our liquor licensing board? Because we currently have the town board serving in that role as a liquor licensing authority. So why don't we do this on a liquor board? And why are we doing that for marijuana?
I'd have to go back and look at liquor licensing and the background on why the board keeps that role.
So I can speak to that a little bit.
Thanks.
A lot of municipalities that have complex liquor licenses and things like that, they do have a separate liquor authority. The number of our liquor licenses are so minimal. We don't have issues with the liquor licenses, and they're just generic renewals year after year. So in talking to Crystal, neither one of us felt that there was a need for a separate liquor licensing authority. Crystal's well versed in the liquor licensing authority, for the laws and regulations. Dan is as well. So felt like we had some really good background on that. With marijuana being so new and knowing, that we need to make sure it is right and correct and all those applications are, perfect. Felt that, none of us had the true expertise to do that, which is why we did reach out to Ms. Brown to help guide us in that. So short explanation.
Anything else? Okay, let's open it up for public comment.
We have no hands raised.
Bring it back to the board for final comments. Anyone? Okay, if there's nothing else to say.
We have
Go
a
ahead.
hand that was raised. We were a little quick on public comment. We did have one hand go up, just as
All right,
FYI.
well, let's go back.
Hannah, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would just like to echo my agreement with Trustee Gator and saying, with this being voted on with such a tight margin to approve the dispensary, I think that the accountability, there's obviously a lot of people concerned about it. And I think that accountability is important, and not just putting it in the hands of someone that the voters have no control over their involvement in the situation is a bad call. So I would really like to see the trustees more involved in the management of that. So thank you.
Okay. Anyone else, Crystal?
Yes, we have Christine. You can unmute yourself.
Christine, I just had a question for Dan. Can it not just be amended, a motion to amend this, whatever it is, a resolution to add the
so.
trustees on the board?
Where are
Yeah, there could be a motion to amend the resolution. I think it would be more of an issue of considering how that would work in practice rather than simply the technical process of how to change that.
We have no other hands raised.
All right, we'll close to the public comment at this point. Bring it back to the board. Let's talk about some final comments here before we think about this. Anybody have a problem with turning this over to Ms. Brown?
I don't feel well versed enough or have the expertise to make decisions on such a new process that has so many stipulations within the ordinances. I don't feel like I would like to hold that responsibility with my lack of knowledge. I think we need to bring in someone who has that expertise. And I also am concerned that if it were up to the board, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, and this might be more of a perception thing, of a decision within the board could be really seen as a political choice rather than what the law says. And I want to avoid taking that liability off of our board and just relate that to somebody who understands completely that process and the requirements. So in my mind, I'd like to approve this and have Kristen Brown serve as that licensing authority.
Other final comments?
So I would like to respectfully disagree. The ordinance very clearly lays out our process. And so that's part of what our voters expect of us when they vote us into office, is to look at things and do what is legal. The ordinance, regardless of my personal feelings on liquor or liquor licensing, there's a very well set out process that I have to follow. The same goes to marijuana. So whether I think marijuana should or shouldn't be, this process isn't left open to my interpretation. I can't just make a decision that says, oh, I don't want a marijuana shop here, I'm just going to disapprove it. If it meets all the requirements, it's approved. If it doesn't meet the requirements, that has nothing to do with politics or my opinion. That has to do with factually, it's missing something. And that should be the same decision that I make, that any other person makes. So I think that the process as outlined in the item approved by the voters is very clear. I think very strongly, especially with this being growing, I think it would be, I agree, we should bring someone in to help facilitate the process and put things together. I personally don't see why we can't hire Ms. Brown to come in as a consultant and to work with the board to put that together, but to still have the board serve as a licensing authority. I think that that's something that we need to hold responsibility for. We put the question to the voters approved it. We need to bear the responsibility, good, bad, or otherwise, for how it comes out. So I do not think that we should be, I think we should bring in professional help. I think that's great. I would love to hire Ms. Brown as a consultant to help us figure and work through that. But ultimately that responsibility needs to be with the board, not passed off to someone else. So I'd be happy to amend that, but if staff doesn't feel like they can do that at this point, then I would say we need to go back to the drawing board.
Okay, we're gonna move this along. I brought these concerns up too when this first came up, that I was a little bit confused as to why we're doing liquor and we're not doing marijuana either. That didn't make quite sense to me. However, it's about the time constraints, and we got February 1st that we've got to start processing applications. And it doesn't seem like we have enough time to get brought up to speed, given everything else that's on our plate. And that's why I think that staff has recommended to bring Kristen Brown right off the bat to get started. But I don't know why the board can't be involved down the road here with some of this. You know, I don't know. I'm not opposed to it at all. It doesn't matter to me that way.
Can I ask a direct question to Ms. Brown? So is the only way that you could bring us your expertise in the next 2 weeks is if we were to appoint you with the authority? If we were to keep the board as an authority, there's no way you could provide that expertise to help us be ready by February. That's what I'm hearing from our staff and the mayor. Is that what you would say as well, being the expert?
Well, it's a matter of, I think, getting processes in place that the Board of Trustees, acting as the marijuana authority, has to approve. And then as applications are filed, then the processing of those applications and providing input. I mean, it would be kind of in the capacity of special, I don't want to say assistant town attorney, but in that capacity of just special legal counsel to the marijuana authority. I mean, that's a possibility.
Okay, so do you feel that if we were to bring you on in that capacity, you would still be able to bring those processes and things that are needed to get things moving forward?
I can make those recommendations. It's up to the marijuana licensing authority whether you want to and follow what my recommendations are. So
Absolutely. And I don't get the impression that this board, as we've said, we need the expertise. So I don't see us, you have coming to us as recommendations and turning around and saying, we're not going to listen to the expert. So it sounds to me like this is a solution. We can serve as that. We can bring Ms. Brown on as special counsel to us as the licensing authority. And in terms of timing, the voters approved this being the Board of Trustees. We have set meetings. Those are on set times. So I don't see an issue with that being on the process that we normally run. So I would like to see us be the licensing authority and bring Ms. Brown on as a, I guess, as a special, I guess you said as a, like a special attorney or advisor.
I think the timing issue that I was bringing up isn't necessarily that it would be impossible. The town board only has one more meeting between when those applications are going to start to be submitted. We have applications coming in February 1st. So the issue is whether we'll be able to provide sufficient information and recommendations to this board if it were to serve as that local licensing authority. Instead, creating a separate local licensing authority, which is certainly part of the ordinance, which established that right that the town board could designate someone else. In doing it that way, we can ensure that this runs very smoothly. So that would definitely be our recommendation.
Well, I mean, right now we're just going to turn this over. I mean, right now it's structured, just turn over to Mrs. Brown. We don't look at it. We have nothing to do with it. We don't see it. Nothing happens. The board doesn't do anything. That's the way it's structured.
Correct. I'm not okay with that. As the elected representative people, we should be part of the process, especially with this being as new as it is.
I mean, But Dan brought up the fact that this has been done in the ordinance right now, or is it in the ordinance that this is supposed to be administrative? Dan.
Correct. Yep, that's already set out in the ordinance, that it's an administrative process that has to check these boxes, and then we have to do that. What we're lacking is the processes of how to get all that collected. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Brown.
Sorry to interrupt, trustee. Let me add that the ordinance indicates that it's an administrative approval. The ordinance also incorporates the required provisions of Title 44 of the Colorado Revised Statutes, which addresses the marijuana licensing. And those provisions indicate that the licensing authority may require a public hearing on an application. And the way I envision that is there may be a circumstance where based on the application, the licensing authority may require a public hearing, which requires that public hearing be posted. It's a public hearing in the sense it's open to the public. But there may be, I can envision many questions as a licensing authority I may have of an applicant that simply are not listed on the forms. I have yet to hold a liquor or marijuana licensing hearing where I don't ask many questions of the applicant. Tell me about the training you do for your employees. Tell me about the layout. Where do you do this? What was your response if there's a violation of the law by one of your employees? I mean, I have a gamut of questions that I ask applicants that you just aren't going to anticipate to ask unless you have the application in front of you. You can go back and forth with written applications, but it just makes sense to me. But there will be times when if I were the licensing authority, I would deem it appropriate to actually schedule a public hearing and have that person in front of me so I can ask those questions of them. Maybe it's regarding corporate structure. I mean, it could be all sorts of things because the marijuana licensing process is exponentially more involved than the liquor licensing process. And that's one reason that it's complicated. So I agree that there's language that says it's an administrative approval, but I think based on other language in the ordinance, it can also require a hearing. I think the authority has the option to require a hearing in the event the authority feels like there's additional information that's needed before the authority can make that decision whether to grant the application, if that's helpful.
It is, thank you.
If I misspoke as to the administrative approval, that certainly highlights the need for bringing in some expertise on state marijuana laws, which are incredibly complex.
Well, I think that we do need the professional expertise that Ms. Brown brings. Nobody's disputing that, but how do we get involved? I mean, like Trustee Gator said, I mean, this is a pretty big issue and we need to, what do we do? Nothing?
I don't think it has to be a one or the other. I think we can do both. That's what I'm trying to say here is let's do both. I'm hearing from staff, we can't do both. And that doesn't, I think we can do both. I think we can work with Ms. Brown and the board. I think that's no problem to do that. Because if we can appoint the authority, we can appoint whoever we want. We can appoint the board and Ms. Brown or appoint Ms. Brown as a special assistant to help us work things out. We can do both. I don't see any reason why we can't. I understand timing might be tough. We'll work through that. If that means that
it's real tough.
Yeah, if that means that I've got to sit in for a special meeting or something, I'm willing to do it. That's a commitment I made to the people of this town, was to be available to do what needs to be done.
I already said my point, and I hate coming back to it over again because I think that was how we had discussed to operate our meetings. But I do want to bring up the point that we have this history of a perception of bias, I want to make sure that's very clear, perception of bias associated with anything associated with marijuana for the town of Wellington from our board. I think it does the best good to bring in an impartial party who has years of expertise and success to process this under, of course, the ordinance that was passed by the voters. So there is no question of bias. There's no question of pointed questions based off of other intentions. I think that, and with the consideration of time, I think we have one choice here, and that is to move forward with the resolution as stated. But I also don't think we're bringing up a lot of new points at this point, so I would like to raise the motion if that's okay.
Well, one more before you do that, if I may. Dan, we can come back and readdress this later, can't we?
Absolutely.
All right.
And I think as one of my points earlier was, as this marijuana process moves along, whether it's Kristen serving as local licensing authority, whether it's Crystal, who's the clerk and marijuana falls under her office, I think we're going to be bringing a lot of information back to this board about how the process is going, and there might be opportunities down the road to modify this.
Okay. Well, that's important. All right.
So what does that look like, bringing this back to the board? Because I hear that all the time. We'll bring it back to the board, yet it's very rare that I actually see something come back to us.
I don't know if that's true or not. We're handling these water rates are going around all the time.
No, that's great. We're working on that, but that's a question. Like when we say this will come back to us, are we talking 2 months, 6 months, 2 years?
Could be 3 months. 3 months sounds about right.
At a minimum, I would expect that we'll be providing regular updates to the board as marijuana applications begin to be accepted on that progress. I think that'll be part of our staff reports as this new regulatory scheme gets developed.
Great.
Okay.
If we're willing to put in there that there's a hard date on this coming back, I will vote for this. Otherwise, I'm not willing to vote for this unless we're going to put a hard date that this is going to come back to the board for reconsideration.
Doesn't matter to me. I pick a hard date. I don't care. Anybody want to take a stab at this on a motion?
I would like to.
Go ahead.
I move that we approve resolution number 05-2022, a resolution creating a local license authority pursuant to Chapter 2, Article 14 of the Wellington Municipal Code, and appointing Kristen Brown as Assistant Municipal Judge to serve in that role.
I'll second.
All right, let's hear the roll call.
Trustee Gator,
No.
Trustee Kenny,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson,
You're in mute.
No.
Mayor Hammond,
Jesus. No. Sorry.
motion fails.
Yeah, that's too bad. Okay. Moving on. I got 9:13. We're going to close our Board of Trustees meeting. We're going to open our liquor license authority meeting that we can do. This is about the annual renewal for Avuncular Bob's Tea-Bar Inn and Brew Pub.
Thank you, Mayor and Trustees. Avuncular Bob's has submitted their renewal for their hotel and restaurant license. A review of the application found the establishment is in good standing with Colorado Secretary of State's office. The Lambert County Sheriff's Office reported no issues directly related to the liquor license, and there were no issues or concerns during a visual inspection. Just like the last liquor renewal that we have that was approved by the board, sales tax compliance has yet to be confirmed, as we are still getting access to that through the state. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions for this renewal, guys? We got any problems, Crystal? Good standings over there?
They're in good standing.
All right.
Point of
Let's
order.
open it up to, go ahead.
Did we do a roll call going into the liquor license?
We did not. Thank you for that. We take a
Trustee
roll
Gator?
call real quick.
Here.
Trustee Jerome? Trustee Kenny?
Present.
Trustee McDonald?
Here.
Trustee Whitehouse? Mayor Pro Tem Knutson?
Here.
Mayor Hammond?
Here. If no other board members have a comment, let's go ahead and open up to the public.
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, bring it back to the board. Good, other further comments, can we go ahead and get a motion to approve the renewal for Avuncular Bob's?
I make a motion to approve the annual renewal for Avuncular Bob's T-Bar Inn and Brew Pub.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gator?
Yes.
Trustee Kenny?
Yes.
Trustee McDonald?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Knutson?
Yes.
Mayor Hammond?
Yes. Okay. I got 9:16. We're going to go ahead and close the liquor license authority and renew our Board of Trustees meeting. That does it for action items and things like that. So we're going to reports. Town attorney, anything further?
Nothing further.
Town administrator?
No report.
Okay. Nothing on the staff here tonight that we need to bring up on these 3 items? Probably not, huh? All right. Any board members have anything they want to talk about? Go ahead, Trustee Gator.
Oh.
Go ahead, Trustee Kenny. You spoke first.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that we moved this meeting to virtual so I could participate. Otherwise, I would not have been able to participate. And if we didn't meet quorum, there was no way we would be able to do actionable items without meeting virtually. So I do appreciate that we are flexible and that we have talented staff that can hold virtual meetings and do it flawlessly at this point. So we've come a long way. So thank you very much.
Okay, Trustee Gator.
Okay, so did want to just a couple of things. Did want to give you guys an update. So we had a pretty major crash down here in downtown last night. We had a vehicle crash that actually took out the light pole across from right in the corner of my house. So all parties, it was kind of, we had a lot going on. We had a Flight for Life helicopter and everything out here. Everyone did walk away. So they were all okay on that. Did want to just commend our town staff. They did a great job. I talked to 2 of the guys that are out there. They heard what was going on. They were on scene very quickly and were able to help. I know with, we had our Christmas decorations, which were supposed to come down this week, came down prematurely, but they were there to make sure everything on town property was cleared up and that they got that all taken out of the way. I know I talked with Miss Garcia. There was some conversation with the LCSO deputies about some concerns around the ice on the roads with Cleveland. And then there was back and forth on whether it's our job or CDOT's job. And CDOT was saying it's our responsibility, but they won't let us touch the roads. So I know I already let Ms. Garcia know about that. So I'm sure she'll work through what needs to be done on that. Our guys did go and take care of the roads. I watched them going through. So our people were doing a great job out there, but did want to update you on that. So if you're wondering why there was a helicopter in downtown on Main Street in front of the T-Bar, that's why. Everyone was fine. Everyone walked away from the accident. So the first responders did a fantastic job. So we had the fire department, sheriff's office, and then the power company came out and got everything taken care of. The other thing that I would like to ask, since we did not pass the approval for the licensing authority, is can we as a board direct staff to reach out to Ms. Brown to see if she'd be willing to serve as a consultant to the board as the marijuana licensing authority to help us get some of those processes in place. So would the board be willing to do that? So we do have that expertise as we're moving into being that licensing authority.
I believe that would be us making a financial decision outside of the confines of the agenda. So I think it might have to wait.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to talk about it right now.
Okay. That's all I got.
Anyone else? I don't have anything. Okay, guys, thank you. It's a big meeting. A lot we got through. Great job on a lot of things tonight, Patty. really did. A lot of good things. And I look forward to the work session. We got a lot to open up, and I hope everybody can make it that time. I know you and me, Rebecca, came off of this sickness, so I hope we'll be good to go next week.
Yep. So we'll talk about water and sewer rates next week. We'll talk about the Timic property. Aloe Fiber will be there to talk about fiber to the homes. So it'll be a good meeting. So very excited for it, to be quite honest. It'll be a good discussion. So thank you.
All right. Okay, guys, I got 9:20. I'll motion to adjourn this meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a nice evening. Thanks.
See ya.
Bye-bye.